Welcome back into Gamecock Central, everybody. I'm Kendall Smith, joined alongside of Wes Mitchell. For the first time, Wes, we are doing the recruiting rundown with me as a graduate of the University of South Carolina. I can no longer say I'm a college student, and it feels wrong. I feel like part of my identity has been stripped, but just because
Yes.
I'm gone does not mean that I'm actually gone. We will still continue with a lot of these shows, and one of our favorites is the recruiting rundown that we do a couple times a month here on Gamecock Central.
Yes, graduate Kendall Smith. It does have a nice ring to it, Kendall. So congrats to you. I've told you that before, but I haven't told you on the recruiting rundown. I am glad. I told you it's not a goodbye. You're still around. You're still here, and you're just in Charlotte, so you're not that far from Gamecock country at all. And there's always recruiting to talk about, Kendall.
Always stuff to talk about with South Carolina football, and I couldn't say goodbye quite yet, like you just said. So excited to get into it today. Certainly a lot to get to with South Carolina, and we've got to kick things off with some of the most recent news. South Carolina picking up another player from the transfer portal. This time it's Anderson native JT Gear, but he's actually coming from Syracuse. So from the north back to the south, defensive lineman, huge pickup for the Gamecocks. Wes, what kind of impact can Gear have right off the bat for South Carolina?
Yeah, you got to think he's excited to get back home, get back out of that cold weather, and really put himself in a position where he's going to have a chance to impact an SEC team this year. Kendall, I think we've talked all offseason on Gamecock Central, running back and then sort of that edge position on the defensive line as being two of their biggest priorities, two of their biggest needs. And this was another situation where it just kind of fit. Again, a Palmetto State native. He's got 3 years of eligibility left. He really had his breakout year for Syracuse last year as a redshirt freshman. Had 3.5 sacks, had some tackles for loss, started most of their games, and just put himself on the radar where once he went into the portal, South Carolina hopped in there quick. I think they may want to add an additional edge prospect as well from the portal. So I think in a perfect world, you want to add two if you're the Gamecocks, but this certainly helps you feel much better about that position in terms of getting someone who could potentially start, but at the very least, you're adding to that depth, putting another guy in there who has experience at the major college football level, and just making you feel better overall about that spot because we knew that was kind of a concern going into the spring when you look at what South Carolina lost last year.
Yeah, and Wes, we talked about it all off season. Those two main points that South Carolina were really trying to hit in the transfer portal was the edge position, and then of course running back. And so we got to get into that here on the recruiting rundown today as well. South Carolina looking to make some moves in the portal in terms of the running back room. One of those names that everybody talking about right now is Logan Diggs. He's transferring out of Notre Dame. He's originally from Louisiana, and LSU certainly battling South Carolina to try to land Diggs right now. I know he was in town recently for a visit. Do you have any update on him and where South Carolina might be in that process?
Yeah, that's a name, Kendall. There's always a couple where Gamecock fans really latch on and they want to know everything going on with him. South Carolina obviously would love to add Logan Diggs. The fan base would love to add him to that roster as well. He did take his OV to South Carolina last weekend. It went incredibly well. I think they did everything in their power to give him something to think about. You're battling not only the fact that he is a Louisiana native who has an opportunity now to go back home to go to LSU, but Brian Kelly, of course, former Notre Dame coach, recruited him to Notre Dame originally as well. So you're battling some factors that are, I think, pretty important. However, South Carolina has a better depth chart to sell, more playing time to sell, and I think they've at least given him something to think about. So the LSU official visit for Diggs is this weekend. So you're probably going to know. I think if Carolina can sort of weather that storm, get through this weekend without him committing while on campus, you maybe start to feel like it could ease back towards South Carolina. Certainly a tough call, I think. Certainly going to be a tough get, but the Gamecocks, great story to sell, and he's someone who could certainly come in right away and impact that position. He was one of the guys. I know, Kendall, you were at the Gator Bowl. I was at the Gator Bowl. Notre Dame had a huge day for their running backs. They had about two or three guys that were all rotating in and had a big day. he was one of those guys that was running over South Carolina's defense, had a big catch and run, scored in that game. So Gamecock fans actually saw him up close. They would love to see him now making those plays in the Garnet and Black this year.
Yeah, don't bring up the Gator Bowl, please. That reminds me of a sad, sad day. Totally kidding, Wes, though. But in all honesty, like Diggs is a really, really important, guy for South Carolina to try to land, and it is going to be really hard against LSU. But not just looking to expand the running back room with him, but maybe some other people as well. So, are there any other names in the portal right now in terms of running backs that you feel like South Carolina may try to target here?
Yeah, the other guy we've kind of been tracking is Demi Sumo Karngbe, who is actually from NC State. He was on an official visit to South Carolina last week during the midweek and has been looking at Colorado. I believe Missouri is involved as well. So that would probably be the other guy that I would be keeping an eye on if I was a South Carolina fan. Other than those two, I don't have any other names. Certainly, if it got past them, maybe you see South Carolina circle back. Maybe there's a grad transfer. This spring practice post spring window is closed now. So for the most part, the targets that are going to be available are already in the portal. However, there could be a grad transfer here or there that could hop in. But for the most part, as far as true names, true targets, those are the two that we have our eyes on right now for South Carolina.
Well, we know that recruiting in the SEC is not for the faint of heart. South Carolina certainly has a lot of big boy recruiting battles to win. They've won quite a few as of late. So, Wes, some of those other names that aren't in the portal, maybe, but that South Carolina is really trying to target right now, especially against these other schools. Let our fans, let our listeners know who some of those guys are and where South Carolina might stand.
Yeah, as you know, June always a huge just month all the way across the board in recruiting. You have, of course, camps going on, but more importantly, you have official visits going on. So I expect, much like last year, many of South Carolina's top targets to be on campus in June, really in that time period where they're trying to make decisions. They want to get it out of the way before August, before their senior years start in a lot of cases. So you look at a guy like Dylan Stewart, On3 has him as the number one prospect in the entire country for 2024. He's an edge prospect. Sterling Lucas has done a phenomenal job there. I mean, you read his list, Kendall, it's like all the big boys of college football. Big boy recruiting battle there. You look at Daniel Hill, 4-star running back out of Mississippi. South Carolina's battling probably head to head with Alabama there. So that's an SEC battle, of course. Peyton Lewis just named his top 6. No surprise, South Carolina made it. Several other schools in there, but I look at Tennessee and Penn State probably being South Carolina's biggest competition. I mean, you can go down the list. Jonathan Paylor out of North Carolina. I think they're probably battling in-state, NC State there. He's been to NC State many, many times during the process, but has said publicly that South Carolina is his leader. So we're going to have a much better feel. Right now, this class is number 6 in the country. In order to maintain sort of that top 7, top 6, maybe top 5 status, other schools are going to be adding prospects as well. So if you're South Carolina, you have to keep adding these 4 stars, maybe a 5-star in Dylan Stewart, if you're going to kind of maintain that status and try to not fall out of that top 10. But there's a path here, Kendall, if they can sort of close on these guys we're talking about, highly rated guys, highly recruited, big battles, then this is a class that could maintain sort of in that top 5, top 6, top 7 range, which certainly would be another huge step in the right direction for Shane Beamer, not just among the fan base here locally, but gives you a little bit more credibility, a little bit more cachet from a national standpoint as a sheer, like pure sign of progress.
We're getting into that really, really, really busy time when it comes to recruiting, and we'll keep everybody posted on GamecockCentral.com. So be sure to check us out there, and then on all of our social media platforms at Gamecock Central. Wes, get a little rest, please. I know you're staying very, very busy, but again, you're doing a great job, and we're grateful to have you at Gamecock Central providing all of this wonderful insight. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this edition of the Recruiting Rundown. He's Wes Mitchell. I'm Kendall Smith, and we'll see you soon.